It's been an incredible 48 hours in the chess world once again. So the long anticipated chess.com 72-page report has now been released. Now I've split this video into two parts. This first part, I'm going to talk briefly on that report in case you've missed it. The second part, I'm going to look at the analysis of Hans Niemann's round 1 game against Christopher Yu. So I've chaptered the video. If you want to skip to that, then please do so. But as for this 72-page report, so this Chess24 article here on screen, this covers quite succinctly what the report goes into. I'm not going to read the whole article, I just want to pull out some highlights for you. So 72 pages. Now it accuses Hans Niemann of cheating in over 100 games, 102 to be precise. Now I don't doubt the analysis, they've got the best tools in the world. They also show conversations where Hans admitted to a whole bunch of cheating. So what this shows is that Hans Niemann lied to everyone in his interview at the Sinkfield Cup, where he said he'd only cheated a couple of times and it was unrated games and not for prize money. That was all false. So not good for him. Bad luck. I don't like that. And ultimately, that kind of lying, etc., cheating does need to be punished, although this was back 2 years ago. So whether the punishment has now been served or there's going to be new punishments, that still is developing. Of course, they recently banned Hans from playing in this global championship, big prize money on the line. I'll skip down the article here actually to where it mentions that. Around why they removed him from that. So they were talking about the fact there was too much on the line. They decided to reverse the decision to let him play due to earlier cheating, etc. So that's one form of punishment he's facing due to his past cheating, and no doubt there'll be future punishment. For example, who knows when he'll be invited back to an event on chess.com, if ever. The other thing the report goes into here is the details of when he cheated online. So this is a table which shows the evidence they've found of the likely games cheated. And now if I run down to here, the other thing they cover is the prevalence of cheating online. Really bad. You know, they talk about dozens of top grandmasters cheating and even 4 of the top 100 found cheating. So really not good. Big problem in the game that we need to stamp out. And then they also consider his rise to his current status in the world rankings, which they find suspicious. They don't say it's impossible or anything like that, but they point to some reasons why it's actually a suspicious rise compared to other players. And they also actually talk about the over-the-board chess and whether they found evidence of cheating, which is interesting because it wasn't necessarily known whether or not that would be in the remit of this report to look at over-the-board stuff. Anyway, they say in this report that they haven't found specific evidence of over-the-board cheating, so they're not ruling it out, they're not ruling it in, they're just saying they haven't found evidence. But then they go on to talk about his rise being slightly suspicious in their view. So I think that just about covers the key parts of this report. I'll leave it there. As always, let me know your thoughts on this one. For me, I think the punishment should fit the crime. So where he's cheated in the past, he needs to be punished. We've seen that from him being removed from the event that he was about to play in. He'll probably be removed from future events. Who knows how long he needs to kind of face a punishment for that past cheating. Chess.com need to figure that with Hans Niemann. I can't say I know what's right there in terms of the length of time of that punishment. But yeah, he needs to be punished for his past cheating and then lying to us all about it. Absolutely. But as for cheating over the board, no evidence found of that as of yet. And so as things stand, and especially with his recent games, for me, we have to assume that he's not cheating. And the game he played today against Christopher Yu with massive, massive security suggests to me that he is not currently in 2022 cheating over the board. So let's take a look at that game. So this is round 1 of the US Championship. Hans Niemann has black, Christopher Yu white, an upcoming chess prodigy. Let's see what happened. So we had d4 on the board, knight f6, and now knight c3, a very interesting moment in the game already, because what we see here is that Christopher is going for this so-called Jabava London system, named after Badur Jabava, who played it a lot. Now, the difference between this London system and a classic London is you don't have this pawn triangle of pawns on e3 and c3. Instead, the knight develops there. So e6 now from Niemann. He goes solid and steady here, leaves this bishop at home. He's going to develop it later. The knight immediately now jumps in, targeting this pawn, forces knight a6, but c6 is coming soon, then the knight will recycle into the game. e3 now from white, bishop e7, knight f3, both players developing, bishop e2, and now we see knight h5 going after this bishop. By the way, if instead of bishop e2, h3, it's just a different way to play, now the knight can jump to e4. You often want to clear this knight somewhere so that then the bishop opens up and f6 could come at the right moment, etc. But we had bishop e2, allows knight h5, so Hans is going to pick up the bishop pair here. Bishop e5 was first played. We see this often when you're going to lose the bishop. White or black does this to induce a weakness before losing that bishop. Now we had c6, kicks the knight back. c5 now on the board. So yes, you did it in 2 moves, but you kicked back the knight. This was the point. Castles now from white. Now Hans takes the bishop. The king has committed over there. Pawn recaptures. Always good practice to capture towards the center. c4 now played, and so this is committal from Hans, but he's got a very concrete idea in mind. He wants to pawn storm on the queen side here, like this, gain some space. But it does give white a free hand in the center here. So Christopher counters, very, very thematic. The bishop now comes to b4, pressuring this knight. And I stumbled across this fascinating line here. So if you capture on d5, my instant first thought here was, well, why not take here first, shatter the pawns, then recapture and play like this? I mean, you're giving up your bishop, but you'd be doing it for a reason. But if you do this, white can actually take on e6. Now this one's attacked, so you'd take here, very logical. Now you can go bishop takes on c4, threatening e7 check, then winning the queen. So no time to take the rook, you have to move the queen, queen e7 best move. Now the rook saves itself, the bishop retreats, and you take the knight here, pawn recaptures d5. So you'd have 3 connected passed pawns for the sake of a piece. Just a fascinating line that I came across there. Anyway, none of this was on the board. We had captures on d5 played by Niemann. Now the knight had the chance to retreat, so you can't shatter those pawns. Knight c7 now, the knight spins back into the game. c3 kicks this bishop, it drops back to d6. Christopher carries on developing here, pawn b5, that thematic pawn storm, and now knight e1 played. So this one's spinning around here. It's going to either be 4 square, e3. You also free up the f pawn in some lines. Bishop e6, knight c2, queen d7. So both players remanœuvering, developing here. The rook came to e1. a5 from Hans. Pawn a3 stops b4. And now this is a very interesting moment in the middle game. So Hans has to find a plan here. How does he want to proceed? And by the way, keep your eye on the clock times because he really starts burning it down now. Now the most logical kind of way to play here to my eyes is bring some firepower to the queen side, maybe the other rook, play for b4, maybe tuck the bishop back, etc. But leave your king looking kind of solid here. But Hans goes g6. We had knight f1 and now pawn h5. So he's playing on both sides of the board and he's going for a direct attack against the king here. Really fascinating, his style of play, very aggressive. Queen d2 played, maybe invading here. King g7, now pawn f4, so it blunts out this bishop somewhat and also gains some space for Christopher. Rook h8 now came, preparing to run this h-pawn down the board. Bishop f3 opens up this rook, and now Hans plays a very committal move. He goes pawn to f5. Now it's really ugly because look at the sorry state of this light squared bishop now. You don't normally want to entomb your bishop like this. That's a very bad bishop, but we'll see Hans's idea. So rook e2 played, preparing to double on the file, and now knight e8. This is the idea. You're bringing the knight into e4. So the rook doubled on the file, the bishop dropped back, saved itself. This one covers e7, so no invasion for white. But rook e5 was now played. Excellent move by Christopher, offering the exchange sack, and you'd be very unwise to take that one, or pawn recaptures, and look at the monster square you've created for this knight. When the position's so closed, the rooks and bishops are just going to get squashed by the white initiative and pieces. So instead we had knight to f6 played, carrying on with that plan, coming into e4. The knight now came to e3, and there's huge pressure on this pawn. It looks like it's just caving in unless you capture, but Hans goes h4. He just ignores it. Again, look at his time, 4 minutes versus 40 minutes nearly for Christopher Yu. Now, what happens if you take this pawn, which didn't happen? Well, here's the trick. You can take back, bishop recaptures, and now you flick in the takes on e5. So the best for white here is to take on a8. Now we retreat the bishop, white retreats their bishop, and so the materials level here once you take on g3, but the key thing is this pawn is very hard for white to actually win back, and in the meantime you've opened the h-file, decent attack coming, bishop pair, etc. So that's why you can't actually win the pawn on d5 in this position here. Instead we had queen f2, covering this pawn, and Hans now kicks on. He could open the h-file here by taking on g3, but from a human point of view, it looks pretty nasty to activate the queen, looking down at your king. Could be some tactics here, using the pin. So instead we had h3 played, and now rook e2 from Christopher. He's preparing to triple on the e-file. He wants to invade, pressure, put the pressure on Hans through the centre of the board. Now we had rook a to d8 from Hans. He comes off this dangerous diagonal, and now queen to e1 sets up the so-called Alekhine's gun, where you've got both rooks stacked with the queen behind, and knight e4 from Hans. He lands that killer knight into the position, and here Christopher plays very, very rapidly. Look at the time difference. He's trying to put pressure on Hans on the clock. So he goes pawn g4, looking to undermine this knight in the centre here, but now Hans chops on e5. The pawn recaptured, and he takes here on g2, starting to open the position for his rooks. Rook takes on g2. This rook invaded, hits this bishop, and now Christopher blundered. And this is really bad time management from him, because look how much time he's got to consider this position. He plays this next move in about 10-20 seconds, something like that. But his best here was takes on e4. After the pawn recaptures, then you sink this monster knight on d4. There's tons of pressure here, so best is to take. This knight can recapture, and who knows what's going on here. Complete mess, and Yu has the time advantage, although they would just about be coming up to time control here. But instead of going for this one, he pushes on with e6, forcing a recapture, trying to open things down the e-file once again, not having a pawn standing in the way. But the problem with these tactics is they're not working for white, they're working for black. So the bishop now recaptures, knight takes with check, queen recaptures, the knight sinks on d4, all looks great, but actually queen f6 just holds everything together. You don't take here, by the way, or that's a royal family fork. You're picking up the queen, you also hit the rook, no good. So queen f6 played, and now the bishop took on e4, but really cool and calm from Hans. He doesn't just recapture, let the queen take, get some play. He pins that bishop with the rook, and so it stops these kind of tactics with rook takes, queen takes, this one, but then you lose your own queen at the end of the line. This is a winning endgame. So instead we had pawn f5, trying to rip things open. Hans takes here. Another great calculation. If rook takes here, then we're taking here. So queen f2 was played instead, and now the rook swings across to the h-file. Hans now has time to calculate, of course. This is the key difference. And here Yu takes on g6. He barely had a better move. Hans takes back. Pawn recaptures, but he's re-picking up the queen with this sequence of moves. King goes, takes, king takes, check, and he picks up this pawn. And this endgame is just completely hopeless. An extra pawn and an extra rook to a minor piece. So king f4 played, the king took on g6, this one marches in, b4, and now you don't have time to take here, or this one runs through here. So instead we had captures, pawn takes back, again this pawn took, but c3, this one's marching on. The pawn came to b5, that one was captured, decoying the knight away, because after takes, which is what was played, there wasn't anything better. The pawn kicks on, and here we had a resignation. That pawn's about to queen. And here's what Hans had to say in his interview after the game.
Hans, First of all, let's address the elephant in the room. You've been under a lot of pressure. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I think that this game is a message to everyone, and you know, this entire thing started with me saying chess speaks for itself, and I think that this game spoke for itself and showed the chess player that I am, and it also showed that I'm not going to back down, and I'm going to play my best chess here, regardless of the pressure that I'm under, and that's all I have to say about this game. And you know, chess speaks for itself. You know, that's all I can say.
Let's discuss the game a little bit.
That's it. But you know, you can leave it to your interpretation. But thank you.
That's it. All
yes.
you want to say.
That's all I'd
for
like
today.
to say. Yes, because
Okay,
it was such a
Hans.
beautiful game. I don't even need to describe it.
Thank you.
So let me know your thoughts on that one down below. If you want to see another amazing game between Hans Niemann and Christopher Yu, then click the video on screen. And if you want to see where this all began explained, then check out the other video down in the corner. Cheers for watching. I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.